Thank you everyone for joining us today on our build session called Building with Mapbox GL JS in React. This is going to be presented by Chris Wong, our senior developer evangelist. And if you've been on some sessions, you know that Chris has already delivered some sessions and was just deeply involved in developing the content for Build this year. So I'm super excited to see what Chris is going to show us. Before we get started, I do want to go over just a few logistics. So this session is being recorded, and all recordings will be available to all registrants in the after the event. So you can go to the Zoom lobby or the build Zoom console that you've been going to access some of these sessions after the event, and recordings will be available there. So there are 60 sessions for build this year. And I'm certain that you can't attend all. So if you miss one, or even if you want to go back to this one to find out something, more information, you can go and check out those recordings. During this session, captions are available in multiple languages. There's a little image on the right of this slide where you can see where you can click in the Zoom bar and get captions. You can submit questions through the Zoom Q&A feature. That Q&A button is also in the Zoom bar. There's a little image on the right here as well. If you have a question, really try to ask us in the Q&A. I will be monitoring that the entire session. We'll work to answer some right there in that box when you send them, but we'll also answer what we can live once Chris wraps up his demo. You can use the chat, but I'm checking the Q&A first and foremost. So the best shot at your question being answered is right there. Finally, like I said, we do have 60 sessions. So if you want to see what else is coming, you can go to mapbox.com/build to see the agenda by day. Believe it or not, this has already felt like a full, lengthy, week-long event, but we really are just hitting like the halfway mark right now. So plenty of more sessions to come. And with that, I will pass it off to Chris.
All right, thanks so much, Greg. So this is building with Mapbox GL JS in React. I'm Chris Wong. I run developer relations here at Mapbox, so I'm in charge of the group that handles the documentation. We also build the playgrounds, so all the things that developers need to be successful building with React products. I've been a web developer for quite a while, done a little bit of work in government, building maps here in New York City for the government. I also teach web mapping, and basically, have been a Mapbox user from the beginning, whether I worked here or not. And happy to be sharing some of the things I've learned about how to get Mapbox GL.js to work well in a React app. So what we're going to cover today, a few slides on how GL.js fits into a React app, and then we'll jump into live coding. So we're going to make a map component to instantiate a map. We're going to use React we're going to use React state to change the map's camera position. We're going to keep markers in sync with state. So we're going to use markers, so you can kind of see how markers and GeoJSON work. And then we'll add GeoJSON data to add a source and layer, and we'll have some interactions on that layer. And if time, we'll use a portal to actually make the marker content a little bit nicer using JSX, so we don't have to manually populate the DOM with things for the markers. Okay, so first and foremost, Mapbox does not maintain an official React package. So if you've used React Map GL, it's great, and it works really well for you. But I've found, and I think a lot of us find, that it is often easier and more straightforward to write your own implementation. And that's what we're going to cover in this session right now, is how to build a straightforward implementation to wrap Mapbox GL.js in a React component. Once you understand the patterns, it's straightforward. You can customize your implementation to match your app's needs a lot more directly. You can have a lot more control, and you can use the latest features without waiting for them to be implemented in the wrapping library. So I've heard that quite a bit, where new things will come out, but they're not quite ready or haven't quite been implemented into the wrappers. So people are looking for those, but they kind of have to wait on somebody else's schedule for that. Okay, so React is declarative. You describe what you want, and React kind of takes care of how it should be rendered. They take care of writing to the DOM. So everything is top-down, state-driven, as you're probably already familiar if you attended this session. Mapbox GL.js is imperative. So you say things like map set center, map.add layer. You're telling it exactly what you want it to do. So our goal here the GLJS maintains its own internal state and rendering pipeline, and it's event driven. But our goal is to bridge the gap. So what you need to do is translate React props and state into imperative Mapbox calls. So you kind of need to build a wrapper, a black box around Mapbox GL JS so that your app can get events out of the map and pass data into the map. And then your component is going to handle that data that comes into the map and figure out how to actually interact with Mapbox GL JS. So you think of your React wrapper as an adapter layer, creates the map instance. It mirrors React props to corresponding Mapbox methods and exposes Mapbox events, so sending those events back up. This is a minimal component, so this is the bare minimum of what you would need to get a Mapbox GL.js map up in a React component. So I'm going to go through and talk about this. Well, I'll talk about it a bit now, and then we'll actually start implementing it. So first things first is this component is returning a div, and that is going to be your map container. So just like when you're using GLJS without React, the map doesn't just live on its own. It needs to be inside of a container, and that container is usually a div. In this case, we're using a ref, so we can keep track of that div. And the same thing we would normally do when you instantiate a map, you just say new mapboxgl.map. Instead of passing it the ID of a container, you actually pass it the ref. So you say mapcontainer.current. This is all happening inside of a use effect. So this is the equivalent of of component did mount if you go back to the older way of doing React. So this use effect hook will fire once when the component mounts, and that's when we want to set up the map. And you'll find as we continue with this development, most of what we're doing is adding more use effects so that we can react to state changes inside of this component. So with that, let's write some code. So give me just a moment. Let me shrink this window and close this. Okay, so I have in VS Code right now, I've got this guy called React Mapping Demo. So this is a Vite app. I just did the npm create Vite command, and this is a vanilla Vite app, a React Vite app that was just stood up. Let's run it. So I'm going to do npm run dev. And let's fire up the browser. Okay, so here's our clean slate React app in Vite. So we've got an app.jsx here. So I'm going to keep app.jsx to maintain the state for my application. And what I want to do first is create a map component. So I'm going to get rid of all this content in app.jsx. And first thing I want to do is render map. Whoops. We're just going to render map. And map, of course, does not exist. So we're going to say import map from /map.jsx. Now let's make map.jsx exist. So we'll make a new file, map.jsx. And const map equals okay, and it's already Copilot's helping me out here a little bit. So let's have this return. We don't need an h2 in here. We do want it to return a div, which is going to be our container, but we don't need to put anything in it. So let's get rid of the closing div tag. And we will say div ID equals map container. And then we're going to say ref equals map container. Sorry, ref equals map container ref. Now map container ref doesn't exist, so we're going to say const map container ref equals use ref null, and then we need to import use ref. Use ref equals require react. Sorry. Import use ref from React. Okay. Now, I haven't brought in Mapbox GL JS at all yet. I've just set up an empty container. The first thing I usually like to do before I even set up any kind of map is to make sure that my container has dimensions. So I'm going to go here into app.css, And I'm going to get rid of all this CSS, and we're just going to do we're going to give everything 100% height and width so there's no confusion. So let's do HTML body, and I believe it's called root, but we'll find out in a second. And then let's also do the class of, ID of map container. So this is my container, and we're going to give everything a height of 100% and a width of 100%. Okay, let me double check this. So we're going to save map. We're going to save app. We have a bunch of stuff that's unused here, but we'll clean that up later. Now let's go back and inspect our app here. So HTML is full screen, body is full screen, root is full screen, and our map container, map-container is not. Why not? Map-container. So root is height. Did I spell it wrong? Map-container. I sure did. Map-container. Okay, map-container is full screen. So now I know I can instantiate the map and I won't go looking for it. This is a pitfall that happens a lot when you start with Mapbox GL JS and your container has no dimensions. So now I know that my map container is filling the screen and I'm ready to proceed. Okay, let's stop the dev server and we're going to install Mapbox GL JS, the dependency. So npm I mapbox-gl. Then we're going to import it into our map component. So we're going to say import Mapbox GL from Mapbox GL. We also need to import the CSS. Import Mapbox GL /dist /Mapbox GL.css. So you have to have the CSS to make the map. And we can also set the access token. So Mapbox GL.access token. Here it wants to import it from a Vite variable, but I'm just going to hard code it. So let's go grab my access token. I think I actually have it. I'm going to go to my cheat sheet for a second here. And we'll grab it from here. Okay. Boom. Did that go? Does it have a closing? Okay. So we've got a access token, but now we need to call a use effect. So we have our container set up. We've got our access token set up. We've imported Mapbox GL JS. So we're going to say use effect, and we'll set up this function. And if we do an empty array here, then this will just run on mount. We need to make sure we import use effect. Okay, and then here we're going to say, first I'll just console log and say map component mounted, just to sanity check that this is going to run. And let's run the app. Let's go back down here and do npm run dev. Check the console. Okay, map component mounted. So we know this use effect is firing, and now we're ready to actually set up the map. We're going to say, first I want to set up another ref. So I'll say const map ref equals use ref null. And then we're going to say map ref dot current. So we're going to assign that ref and say new mapbox.gl.map. Copilot's going to fill in the blanks for me here. And actually, I didn't want it to do that much, but let's do that. Okay. So the return inside the use effect is actually going to remove the map. So in most cases, your map may live through the entire lifecycle of a user using your app, but if the component ever does unmount and you are setting up multiple maps that show up in your application, you're going to want to call remove on that map to clean things up before the component unmounts. So that's what this return statement does. But here's our instantiation. This is Copilot seems to have put in an older style here, so we're going to switch this to standard style. We're telling it which ref we want to put the map into, and then we have a center point and zoom. So this should be all we need. Let's go check it out. And there we go. So we have a map focused on New Jersey, and we can interact with that map, and it's filling up the screen as I wanted. So that's the basics. So this is the bare minimum React component to instantiate a Mapbox GL JS map. Okay, next thing I want to do is we're going to add a little bit of state up here in the top level in app.jsx. And I'm going to make some buttons that'll fly the map to different locations. So again, to fly the map, you call map.flyto, but we don't want to directly call the map. We want to have the map react to a state change. So first thing I want to do is let's get some buttons set up. So I don't you don't have to watch me code up the entire thing. I'm going to go get button panel.jsx, and we'll talk about this button panel component. So let's make a new component. Button panel.js. Oops, button panel.jsx. Okay, this is just a simple button panel. I have a cities array here, so it's going to make 3 buttons based on the data in this array. And each you can see each city has coordinates associated with it. So of course we're going to use these coordinates to control the map. But first let's just get it rendering. Let me also grab some CSS to make this look a little nicer. So I'm not going to make separate CSS files. I'll just throw everything right now in app.css for brevity's sake. And we need to make sure we use button panel. So let's add a fragment here. And thank you, Copilot. Button panel. And let's put map back in there. So now our app is rendering the map component and a button panel component. And let's indent and take a look. What did I not do? Didn't import it. Okay. Import button panel. Thank you. And button panel wants its CSS. So let's get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so button panel. We've got these 3 buttons that do nothing right now. And if we check out the button panel React component, you'll see that button panel is expecting a prop called onCity button click, which we have not provided, of course. So that's why we're seeing that error on click. So let's wire that up. So what is it? onCity button click equals. So we'll do handle city button click. Let's make another function here. Const handle city button click. Thank you, Copilot. So handle city button click is going to pass that whole city object, which has coordinates as a property. And then we're going to call set city. So I'm going to use state for that. So let's do a new state variable here called city set city. And let's format a little bit here. Okay. So what do I want to do? So when I click one of these city buttons, I'm going to take the city data, which is one of these guys. So London, which has a name and coordinates, Paris or New York. And we're going to set that to this city property. And then just to confirm that that's working, we're going to say console.log selected city, and let's go test it out. Okay, so when I click Paris, I log selected city, name Paris, and then the coordinates is an array of coordinates. So I can keep clicking these all day. So we are successfully updating state at the app component level. Now I need to pass this down into the map component and have it react to the state change. So we're going to say selected city equals city. So now I have a prop called selected city. My phone thinks I said Siri, not city. Now we have a prop called selected city. And let's go down into our map component and handle it. So we're going to take a prop called selected city. So now we need another use effect. So let's leave a comment here. It says initialize the map. And now we're going to add another use effect. Actually, let's put it down below. And we'll say use effect. And this one should be based on selected city. Thank you, Copilot. And we're going to say if selected city and mapref.current, and then we're going to fly to. So if there is a selected city, and if the mapref exists, which means we have a map to control, we can say mapref.current.fly to, And we're going to say our center point will be selected city.coordinates, which is the coordinate array that was passed in through the props. So let's check this out and see if it works. Leave a little comment here to say what this use effect is doing. So we have one use effect to initialize the map. We have another use effect now to fly and react to this button change. So let's see if it's working. So when I click London, we're updating state at the top level. We're passing that state down as a prop into the map component. And then the map component has a use effect that is controlling the map and initiating the fly to. So this is working great. Okay, next thing I want to do now is move on to some markers. So if you're familiar with the marker class, we can have Mapbox GL JS draw a marker using the default marker SVG. But how do we want to do it? So first thing what I'm going to do right now is make sure that when I click on the map, it's going to add a marker at that location. So normally your markers would come from some other data source, but for right now, we can kind of kill two birds with one stone and show how to handle this event and pass it up. So we're going to handle a click event on the map and then pass it up to the top level app. Once that click has been registered, we're going to create we're going to create an array of markers. We're going to pass that array back down into the map and then create markers for each thing in that array. So let's see if we can get that working. First, let's get the click set up. So in my use effect, when I instantiate the map, I can call map events like this. So I can say map.on, and we'll say load. And I'm going to use sorry, it shouldn't be map, it should be mapref.current. So let's do mapref.current because we have to refer to the reference, the ref, mapref.current. Okay, so mapref.current. So once the map loads, we want to do mapref.current.add interaction. All right, and the interaction API, we can call this map click. So we need to make a name for this interaction. We're going to give it a type, which is going to be click. We actually don't need a target because we want anywhere on the map to trigger this. And not callback, copilot, but handler. And I can just hard code a function here right now and just console log where the map was clicked. And this will make sure that this is just a sanity check that the interaction is working and registered. So let's check out that click interaction. So let me clear the console. And if I click on the map, oops, let's reload. If I click on the map, you'll see logs in the console here, map clicked at, and it's giving us the coordinates. So I've got a click handler working. Now, how do I pass this out of my map component? So what I want here is another prop. So this is going to be called on map click. And then instead of this handler function being hard coded here, I'll just say on map click. So when the map is clicked, we're going to fire this on map click prop, which is the function that we have to pass in. And let's go back up to app.jsx and make sure we pass in on map click. So now we're at the top level here in app.jsx, and let's say on map click equals, and then we'll do handle map click. And let's make another function up here called const handle map click. Okay, now we've got a longitude and a latitude. So here I'm going to sanity check this one more time. I'm going to say map clicked at from app.jsx. And let's make sure that when we click the map, yeah, it says map clicked at from app.jsx. So we're now passing this event up from my map component into the app, top level app component. So what do we want to do with this e.longlat? So this is the coordinates in an object that has a long property and a lat property. What I want to do is actually create an array that's going to power my markers, right? So I'm not going to, I don't want to click and then say, take this long lat and make a marker out of it. I want to update data or update state with that information and then pass that state back down into the map component. So here's what I want to try here. Let's make up a new state variable here to hold our markers array. So we're going to say const markers set markers equals use state. So this will be an empty array when we first initialize. Next, we want to, we're going to say set markers. Markers e.longlat. We don't want to just use e.longlat. We want to actually make an object here. So I need like an ID on these markers. So I'm going to use ID. Let's do time.now. Sorry, date.now. And we'll say the coordinates are, we'll make an array of coordinates e.longlat.long and e.longlat.lat. Okay, so this should update markers. I think there's one more thing I need to do here, which is we need to actually use a function in here to make sure we get the previous value. And I think, let's see, previous, I think that will work. Okay, so here before we return, I'll do console.log markers state, and then we'll log markers, and let's make sure that that's working. Okay. So I click the map, and we see marker state is logged. We've got one object in this array, and it's got an ID with this timestamp, and then coordinates well, those are the coordinates. So if I click a few times, we should see, yeah, so I'm clicking around, and we can see that this markers array is growing. So we're growing the state. Now that we have this state object with 5 markers in it, I want to make sure I pass that down into map. So let's clean this up a little bit. And we'll say markers equals markers. So now we're passing down this markers array into map, and my next task is to implement this functionality inside of the map component so that it'll render markers for each item in this array. So let's go back down into our map component, and same thing, we're just going to use another use effect. So now we've got a use effect to initialize the map. We've got a use effect to control this fly to action. And then now we're going to say use effect. And this one will be based off of not on map click. We actually need to pass in that prop, which is called markers. And where were we? Okay, markers. And now we're going to iterate over those markers. So we're going to say if mapref.current, we can say mapref.current, sorry, let's do markers.each marker. Okay, and then we'll say new Mapbox GL JS.marker. So I'm going to update this in a moment to use a marker component, but for now, I just want to make sure that this works. So there's one way of approaching the problem. So, oh, it already drew them. So when I click, the marker is created. I think you can see these are stacking up because it's actually repeating every single time. That's probably not what we want because it can't keep track of which ones exist already and which ones don't. That was one way to approach it, and which is not the right way. And now we're actually going to use a component for this. So let me go back to my cheat sheet and bring over a new marker component, which I created. And we'll say new file here. We'll say marker.jsx. And this is interesting too, because you need to think about your marker as it lives inside of the React lifecycle as well. So we want, when data is created for a marker, we want to draw that marker, but we also want to be able to remove a marker from state and have React get rid of it. So this marker component will do all that. It's got a use effect of its own to actually create the marker. And then it has this return inside the use effect that will remove the marker. So this can keep track of its own life cycle in React, which is great. So now all we need to do is implement it. So let's go back here. We're going to get rid of this use effect that we just created. Let's import our marker component. Import marker from marker.jsx. And instead of a use effect, we're actually just going to use the rendering of the map component itself. So let's use a yeah, so we're going to use a anyway, so now the map component is going to render the map container, and then we're going to iterate over markers, and for each marker, we're going to use this marker component. So we're saying we're going to use the ID as the key. The key thing here is that we have to pass in the map ref. So the map instance itself needs to be passed in to the marker component because the marker needs the map in order to draw the mark. In order to actually add the marker to the map, it needs the map. And then lastly, we'll pass it in the long lat. And if we go back and look at our marker component, we pass in map and long lat as props. And then if there's no map, we're going to return. If there is a map, we're going to add a marker to that map. And then we're going to use long lat from the prop that was passed in to set the long lat of the marker. So let's try that. So when I reload, when I click the map, we get a marker. You can see they're not double drawing now, because before when we did a use effect, they were just drawing, every time I clicked, it was actually redrawing all the markers in the array. So this is good. So this is working now, but what if we want to remove them and have React control the lifecycle? So I have another component. Let me go look at my cheat sheet, and let's call it marker list. So I'm going to actually build a UI element outside of the map that can also show the list of markers. So let's try that. So let's do new file marker list.jsx. And let's grab some CSS for that file. Marker list.css. Again, I'm going to drop this in my app.css just so we can be quick. And let's make sure we back up at app.jsx. We're going to now import marker list. And let's render marker list. Okay, and we don't need to call on delete just yet, but let's just get it rendered first. Come on. Okay, let's see if we can get this rendered. Oh, it wants its CSS, of course. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so we have a marker list. Whoops, what happened when I clicked? Doesn't like it. Undefined, reading long. Okay, I think it is because I used a slightly different format here. So let's inspect. Yeah, when we're passing down markers, I have coordinates as an array, and this is looking for marker.longlat, which doesn't exist. So we want marker.coordinates dot at position 0. So we're using an array instead of a object that has a long and a lat property. Let's do marker.coordinates position 1 to fix 5. Okay, let's try that. Okay, there we go. So this is looking great. Every time I add a marker, remember we're updating state, which has an array of these marker objects. And now we're passing that down to two different components. One is this UI component that is just going to list them, and the other one is the map, which is going to do its own thing to draw them. So each of these components is kind of handling things on their own, but they're all connected to the same state. So what I next want to do is make sure that this X button that I've added here to the marker list will actually delete. So let's see if we can get that wired up. So we have marker list on delete. So on delete is another function that's going to be called backup in app.jsx. So let's see if we can add that. On delete will be handle marker delete, and let's add a handle marker delete function. And I think Copilot knows what I want to do here. So we're going to say set markers. We're going to filter by the ID of the marker, and then it will be removed. And if this works, and if the lifecycle of the marker component that I'm using in my map handler works, or my map component works, then it should be removed from both. So let's take a look. So I draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 markers. And as soon as I remove, when I click this X, it's removing it from state, and that state's flowing down to this UI component and the map, and they're both handling that new state on their own, which is great. So there's our cool React-driven, state-driven marker implementation. All right, running longer on time than I wanted to, but I want to see if we can get a GeoJSON layer onto this map. Let's see here. If you go to this repository in my personal GitHub, I've got some subway data for New York City in GeoJSON format. And I'm just going to very quickly bring this into the map without styling it much. So I'm going to click on data. I'm going to grab the subway stops, and I'm going to click raw so I can get this URL to get the raw GeoJSON. Let's go back to the map component. And same thing. We want to do this on load. We don't have to do this in any special kind of React way because this will only be loaded once. So this is kind of internal business of this mapping app or mapping map component. So in addition to adding the interaction, we're going to do mapref.current.add source, and we're going to call it subway stops. Type GeoJSON, and data will be not this, but the URL I just copied. Come on, Copilot. Okay, let's try that again. Data, that. Okay, thank you. So that should get us our source. Now let's add a layer. Mapref.current.add layer. So it's going to fill in some styling, some layer properties for me here. So let's see if that worked. Let's go back to our app here. And we're not looking at New York, of course, but here is our data. So the thing I wanted to show you here, if I can do it very quickly in the last couple minutes, is I want to add I think I'm running out of time and I don't think we're going to fit it, but let's try and get it anyway. So we'll say mapref.current.add layer. So we're going to do another layer for a highlight. And what I want to do is highlight on hover when you highlight over this map. So we're going to say mapref.current.add layer. It's going to be using the same data, but we're going to call it subway stops hover. And we're going to use a circle subway stops. So we're going to make the radius, we'll just make the radius 10 on hover. Now, I haven't added any filter to this, so they should all be showing as a radius of 10 now. Yeah, they're all bigger now. So let's add a filter. And this will basically a filter that always returns false so that we never see this. Let's change this hover to a different color too, so we can say, okay, so they'll be red. So now what I want to do is add an interaction. So we already had an interaction up here for the map, but now I want an interaction on this particular layer. So I'm going to move this interaction down below the add sources and add layers. So here's our interaction for the map itself. And now we want an interaction on the layer. So we're going to say mapref.current.add interaction. And we're going to call it subway hover. And let's fill in the rest of this object. So it's going to be type mouse enter. The layer will be subway stops, and the handler is, what is the handler going to do? We want this to, again, we don't want to handle this internally. We want to pass this up to the top level app as an event. So we're going to say handler handle station hover. All right, and let's see if that can work. So Handle station hover is, of course, not a prop yet. So we'll say, sorry, let's do on station hover. On station hover. Make a new prop on station hover. And up in app.jsx, we now need to make sure on station hover goes to handle station hover. Handle station hover. We don't want to do any map stuff directly here. So we want to actually set state. So we need a new state variable up here that says const selected station, set selected station. So on station hover, we're going to say set selected station and then station name. We actually want the ID, so let's log this first. Okay, in the interest of time, I do want to save time for questions, so I'm going to actually cut this a little bit short, and we're going to switch over to my cheat sheet here, and I'm just going to run that and show you what this looks like. So here's the finished project. And what I've got here, I actually did it on click, not hover. But if you click each one of these markers, we're actually passing that ID, the unique ID of that marker, up to the top level state. And then that state gets passed back down to the map component, and the map has another use effect that will handle a new filter on that layer. I'll show you that really quickly, and then I think that'll be it, and we can take a couple of questions. So let's go to our map.jsx. And if you can see here, there's another use effect that will, yeah, this is our use effect that handles the selected station. So once the selected station comes back down, we call set filter. So again, we're initializing an event based on the hover, passing that up to the app for state management, and then passing the state back down and reacting to that state using a use effect. So the same pattern we've shown over and over again. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I think that'll be the end of this demo.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much. I am always impressed by our Mapboxers who can go live with the demo. It's always a little risky when you're when you're going live that things don't work out, but that was super informative, fairly in depth, and really awesome. We did get some questions, Chris. I don't know if you can open the Q&A. I'm almost hesitant to ask them out loud. There's code, they're kind of lengthy as well. So maybe it's better if you maybe read through and see. Two of them have been answered, and we have two open ones.
Yeah, I see one about marker wobble. And yeah, I think I don't know if I have a direct answer on that. I think I've observed that in the past, and I think you need to be extra careful that you're not like rendering the same marker multiple times because they'll end up right stacked on top of each other. And then of course, because those are elements that are rendered in the browser has to keep track of kind of keeping them in position when the map moves. And I think, if you have way too many on the screen, you may have more than you even know that are appearing. It might be a rendering thing where there's just too many and the browser starts choking. But again, I can only speculate, so it's probably the best answer I can give without seeing it specifically. I was wanting to test the lighting and weather to impact the map. Would this passing from app to map be the right approach? I see one. So lighting and weather, passing from app to map. Oh, okay. So, I mean, so for lighting effects, for example, with Mapbox Standard, you don't really have to do anything special for them. So like inside your map component, like you don't have to expose that as a prop unless you want that component to be used in multiple places where you might initialize it differently, right? So that's why I think in this situation, when you have full control over the map component, if you want it to always be dark, then you just initiate the map with light preset dark, and then that's it. You don't have to build any special functionality for that. It'll always initiate as dark. If you're using the same map component, if you built your own map component library and you want to like use it in multiple apps, then yeah, you would expose that and say you can pass that in as a prop, and then use that to initialize the app, and then the user of that component then has control, and you've kind of built your own API for it.
I don't know if you saw Michael did say I want it to be dynamic based on user condition.
Yeah. So same thing. So you can pass in if they set state for the light condition, you can pass that in as a prop and then have make a use effect just like I showed, and say if if the light condition changes, then you can say you can call map dot what is it? Um, I'm sorry, I'm blanking off the top of my head right now, but at runtime you can change the light preset in Mapbox standard very easily.
Before you get to the next one, in regards to the wobble, Andrew is also responding in the chat right now. Andrew's with Mapbox as well. It might be a good idea to inspect the DOM in those cases to determine if there are more markers rendered than necessary. And then Andrew also said in response to the question Chris just answered, Michael, if you want a GitHub link to that project, you can share it in our Discord and he'd be happy to take a look. Just want to make sure people are seeing between the chat and the Q&A.
Um,
Yeah,
Same thing. Yeah, I see another question on is there a way to activate and deactivate controls like the geolocate control using React State? Again, like you just have to build it that way, right? So if you wanna have an array of controls and then pass that controls array down, um, you just call map.add control, map.remove control on your own inside of that use effect to react to state. So again, you have direct control over the Mapbox GL JS map. So translating that into whatever React setup you have is pretty straightforward.
does markers support clustering on the map?
Yes, so clustering is a thing, not with markers actually. So the answer to that is no. It has nothing to do with the React implementation. That's just a Mapbox GL JS thing. So markers are just DOM elements that are positioned around the map and will move when the map moves. So you can use our default marker, which I showed here, or you can add an image or kind of fill it with anything you want because it's just an element. Um, but you can't do clustering with them. So there are third-party libraries that can help you decide, to represent one marker as others, or one marker in place of multiple others. But out of the box, Mapbox GLJS doesn't handle that. You can, however, use clustering if you have a GeoJSON source and layer, but not markers. So that's kind of two different ways to get data into the map. And you should check out my session from 2 days ago that actually talks about the difference between markers and sources and layers.
And then, Chris, what's the best way to connect with the developer relations team at Mapbox?
We don't have like a direct email right now, but you could jump into our Discord server. If you ask questions in the Mapbox Reddit subreddit, we actually are pretty responsive there. And yeah, otherwise stay tuned because we put out announcements for webinars and things like that you can connect to. But yeah, you can also, I think I shared a repo on my personal GitHub. If you open an issue there or contact me there, actually I think my email address is on a lot of that stuff that happens on GitHub. So but yeah, lots of ways to reach out.
And just to make sure that everyone saw the chat, Andrew did say we have a number of tutorials and examples on clustering, but it's important to note that clustering doesn't work on a marker element, like Chris said. It works on point data, which uses symbol layers. Okay. That was very active Q&A. I think we're just a little over, but I'll give one more minute if anyone wants to ask a question. And while we wait, like I said at the very beginning of the session, there's 60 of these throughout the event, and we're only about halfway through, so there's plenty to come. I'm very excited about all of them, but we have a handful of customer-driven sessions happening at the end of the week that I believe Chris is actually hosting, at least a couple of those. So that'll be like a customer coming and basically telling us, what they do, their story, what their use case was, how they work with Mapbox, and then showing us as well how that happens. So I think just could be very useful for other customers. Go to the build session lobby or the build Zoom console where you've been accessing all these events, and you can see the calendar of events coming up. And with that, I think we're good.
All
Thank you,
right.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.